Latvia and Russia, neighbours with difficulties. In the interview, Latvian Foreign Minister Edgars Rinkevičs.
Mr. Foreign Minister, with what's happening in Ukraine, the Russian border being just a couple of 100 kilometers away from where we're sitting here in Riga, are you afraid that something like that could happen in Latvia?
No, I don't think so, because Latvia is a member of NATO and European Union. And since the beginning of the crisis in Ukraine, annexation of Crimea, I think that NATO has done a lot to reassure Baltic region, to put more troops, to put more airplanes. However, I have to say also that we are seeing increased Russian military presence on our borders. Also,
you just intercepted a couple of Russian bombers.
There have been many cases, but certainly we see that this kind of situation, of course, is something that we should be worried, not so much as direct invasion, but we should be worried about the kind of accidents that may happen. Also, I would say that we see this as a kind of signal to NATO, as well as signal to the domestic public that Russia is strong and trying to do everything to reassert its kind of status of power.
But there are also some similarities. You have a large Russian minority here. I mean, if there were ever to be some kind of vote on your eastern borders, how do you think the outcome would be? Do people there really want to stay with Latvia?
Well, I think that there have been many foreign journalists coming since spring, and what they have heard, all of them, what they have heard is that our Russian community doesn't want any kind of repetition of Crimea scenario or Ukrainian scenario. What we have seen recently is actually that also there is split opinion in Russian community about events in Ukraine. There are those who, under Russian propaganda, definitely see Russia doing right thing, but there are also quite a number of people who are Russians or Russian-speaking community. There are also Ukrainians, Belarusians, that actually think that what Russia does currently is not something that they can approve. So from that point of view, I can say that I think that they really see themselves belonging to Europe more than actually belonging to Russia.
Let's talk about NATO one more time. Do you think that what the Russian President Vladimir Putin is doing right now is testing NATO's limits?
President Putin tries to restore the glory of Russia, tries to restore greater Russia. At the same time, I think that he also tries to challenge NATO in a way to show to his own public that Russia is getting stronger, more assertive, more independent. And if we look at some of his speeches this year, we see the same line. I think that we all should be extremely careful when it comes to so-called concept of Russian world. I think that this is something that European Union and NATO should take very seriously.
Are they taking it seriously enough?
Well, I think that the mood is changing, and if we compare, let's say, our meetings at the beginning of this year with the last meetings at the level of foreign ministers of EU and NATO or Wales Summit, I think that the realization that we are living in different world is slowly coming here. Unfortunately, we still need to get a proper response and proper strategy, and that's something that we have to debate both at NATO and the EU.
So you're saying what NATO has presented and what the EU is doing at the moment, that's not a proper strategy?
I think that what we are currently doing, like NATO and the EU, those are right things. If you look at EU's efforts concerning Ukraine, concerning Eastern Ukraine, that the strategy of political dialogue but also applying pressure is the right one. The most important issue I want to underline is that, and I think that has been quite a surprise to Russia, that the EU has kept the unity. Even if we are debating sometimes for hours, and even sometimes there are leaks that this or another country or minister or prime minister thinks a bit differently, at the end of the day we have unified approach. So it's a good thing. At the same time, I think that we have to work on new strategy at the EU level. which should contain elements of both engagement as much as we can, political engagement, all kinds of issues where we can work together, but at the same time seeing the aggressive behavior of Russia, also there should be element of containment. On NATO, it's actually the same.
Sanctions, basically.
Containment could be viewed differently. Economic sanctions, I think that also some kind of, freezing political dialogue on some of issues, if that's necessary. We should also address such issues as information warfare. We should also address issues of energy security. That could be actually not only the element of containment, but actually it's in our own EU's interests. And here in this country, as you know, we are still dependent 100% on Russian gas. So there are some issues that should be put in that strategy. At NATO level, I would say that the decisions to reassure the Baltic region, to send more troops, ships, airplanes, also to reassure Poland, to reassure Romania, are the right ones. But I think that also NATO should understand that we are to some extent back to the classical Article 5, that we need to address defense capability issue, defense budget. At the same time, also NATO should be prepared to address so-called hybrid warfare. Cybersecurity issues, again, strategic communications, countering the open propaganda of Russia should be some of elements of the alliance's strategy.
And I assume that's going to be one of your priorities, not, of course, the NATO part, but the EU part during your upcoming EU presidency for Latvia, which starts in January. You have 6 months to change Europe. I assume that your options are limited to really set the agenda, right?
Well, I certainly believe that after 6 months of our presidency, Europe will be a better place to live. We have three kind of big priorities we want to achieve. The first is, of course, competitive Europe, and our presidency will have to deal with, and we are happy to actively work with Commission and the President of the Commission on his proposal on investment package for Europe, 315 billion euro strategic investment fund. Also, we would like to see that our presidency is a starting point for real creation of energy union. Of course, single market, we will have to address some challenges that we see on the horizon, especially when it comes to free movement of labor, some other issues that inevitably will fall on our table. Second is digital Europe, and the third is engaged Europe, so our neighborhoods, both, by the way, Eastern and Southern.
Now, about the digital part of that, the commissioner in charge for that, Günther Oettinger, said the other day in Brussels that Europe has already lost the friendly against the USA. He compared it to a soccer game, and that Europe needed to prepare for the upcoming World Cup in this sense, otherwise we wouldn't stand a chance. Do you agree?
Absolutely, and I think that since we still have a lot of national barriers among member states, we have not addressed some key issues of development of the digital Europe, both in public sector as well as to ease some business communications. Also, we should address cybersecurity issues. We should address also data protection issues. All those issues should be addressed very seriously. I do not expect that the relevant legislation will be passed during our presidency, no. We just want to see the strategic approach, and we hope that the Commission will come out with proposals in this regard, and as a presidency we do hope that during our tenure the European Council will be able to endorse some kind of roadmap, and we will be able to work to prepare for the World Cup in digital agenda.
A lot of hard choices, and you seemingly made a personal hard choice in fall of 2014, coming out as gay. Latvia is not a society that's necessarily known to be open to gays. Was that a hard choice?
Well, of course, that was a choice that took quite a time. And of course, it's still quite an issue that sometimes gets public attention and debate here. But as you see me sitting here and answering your questions as a foreign minister, I think that you should really understand that Latvia is much more modern society than sometimes some people would imagine as a stereotype.
How was the backlash?
Well, I had a lot of endorsements and very positive messages personally and also publicly. There have been also quite a lot of criticism for that or another reasons. There have been also some, let's say, I would even say idiotic statements made by some people, but that's life. I think that it doesn't, let's say, differ very much from any other European countries. There are different opinions in societies on such issues, but I think that definitely if we look back at our history of regained independence since 1991, there has been quite a progress also in this direction.
Was that also a statement towards Russia, which is very hostile towards gays, at least the government is, saying, look, I can do this in Europe?
No, I haven't had such kind of statement in mind. That was more kind of, you know, the issue. I decided that it's right thing to say openly, that it's right thing that people know that, and that we somehow move on with some issues here in this country. Those issues like, let's say, regulation, legal regulation of partnerships, that is not going to happen very soon. We still need time to discuss, to have an informed debate, but it was nothing about Russia and it was not a statement to Moscow. However, of course, there were some hysteric reactions by some of I would say internet trolls just after that decision, but it's their own business. I really don't care what they think.
All right. Thank you very much for talking to us.
Thank you.